For a Business Coach podcast, I'm sure you would expect to get lots of business tips, and we have plenty of those. But today, on this episode with Business Coach Matt Ball, he actually asks a bigger question. You're going to be asking yourself by the end of this episode, what is the purpose of the business and how the business can be the vehicle for something greater? Matt, why business coaching for you?
It's an interesting one, actually. I'm an accountant by background. I spent a lot of time doing financial restructuring, but I realized during that process that I actually cared more about sort of the people I was looking after in the businesses rather than just doing the straight financial reviews. And I left the financial sort of sector, went into industry, and actually had a business coach there. And I was in my early 30s sort of wondering what was next. Decided maybe naively at the time, but ultimately it was a good choice to move into business coaching. Yeah, I love growing businesses, really interested in commerce and business, but more importantly, sort of love helping people sort of realize and get the best out of themselves.
So financial restructuring, what were you seeing a lot of challenges that businesses had at the time, and then how have you been able to help them now as a business coach?
Yeah, I think the sort of that background I had is a massive part of who I am as a coach now. From the businesses that I work with were either, maybe slightly smaller in the time, smaller businesses, so maybe under sort of £1 million turnover up to multi-million pound PLCs. And the key patterns are really, it was about decision making, and which ultimately for me comes down to communication. And there'd often been a communication breakdown somewhere along the way, either internally within the business or with the stakeholders such as key customers, key suppliers, or the bank. So for me now, one of the key things I try and instill with all the businesses that I work with, that sort of communication, ensuring that you are communicating, but you're communicating quickly with stakeholders and with everyone associated with your business, just helps mitigate the risk of things going wrong. It's normally when people haven't communicated in some way or there's been a communication breakdown that things tend to go wrong, in my experience.
That's a really interesting point that you raise, because quite often as business owners, we can sort of think it'll sort itself out, or I'll just wait till next week when these things are fixed, or so-and-so pays the bill, or whatever, creditors, whatever it might be, debtors. So tell me about communication. What in what sense? And is that multiple communication pieces?
I think I think what you said is the key bit, that it's if you see an issue or we sense something sometimes as business owners, it's leaning into it. There's a great book called Lean In, and it's that concept of surfing. To get the best result, you have to lean into the wave. And I think sometimes in business we are scared of leaning in, of having the conversation with that employee maybe that has consistently been late or is behaving in a way that we let it slip, or the customer that's a late payer that then goes bust because we never communicated with them. So I think for me, it's not rushing into things, but it's sensing something as a business owner. And the people that I work with that achieve the most success, I suppose, are the ones that trust their instinct and are able to communicate not only quickly, but in the right way to get the desired result. One of the great Actioncoach phrases is the art of great communication is the quality of the response you get. And I think the business owners that really nail that communication piece and are able to get the response they want from the customer, from the bank, from the employees, are the people that really make a difference in their businesses. Yeah,
that's interesting. I mean, I don't know if you've heard of this saying. You're from the UK, so you might have, but sweeping things under the rug or the carpet, like it's often we're in denial. We know at a gut level, or we can see things happening or unfolding, and we just don't take that action to communicate. What's an example of where you've seen this go wrong?
Yeah, we've just recently actually put in place with a client a new sort of bonus and appraisal structure. So he's had a team, relatively a decent turnover business, and opticians, top end opticians with a team. And they hadn't really done much for a couple of years with the team. Now, whether that was complacency, whether it's maybe they were scared of what the response they were going to get, there's probably a few things that are maybe for another call or a coaching session with them about why they hadn't. But it became apparent that actually, in order for the business to grow, the team were going to be a key part. And that's, for any business, really, the job of the business owner is to encourage and facilitate the team to grow the business. And these guys just absolutely nailed this process, that really engaged with the team about what they wanted, got them absolute clarity on their roles and what they were meant to be doing, their responsibilities, the results that were expected from them. And then the communication ultimately on the remuneration package and the bonus that was aligned to the company vision, they all bought into it. And since then, they're sort of consistently achieving record months. And I think the business owners are a little bit surprised. And I'm never a coach who says, I told you so. But they sort of now realize that actually that communication piece and that engagement with the team is going to be fundamental to their growth moving forward. And it's just going to set them up amazingly to not only grow the business, but also for that team to take a bit more ownership of the direction of the business. And we've got that going on with multiple clients. It's a key part of the sort of direction and journey that they go on.
So direction and journey for the business, other than kind of communication, which is obviously an important part of the growth of the business, what do you see is the kind of key to sort of success for business and the clients that you're working with?
Yeah. For me, I think it's a really interesting one, the concept of direction and vision at the moment. I think the business world and the world is changing very quickly. And I think as human beings and business owners, sometimes it's quite easy to go short term. It's quite easy to say, what am I firefighting this week? Maybe even get them to think 90 days or what does a good 2025 look like? But for a lot of people, the concept of 5-10 years is almost so alien to how people operate now. We really have to work with them to get them thinking like that. And the way I do that is by helping them vision what they want their life to be like. Because often we can think we need some business because we've read a great book or something like that. But if this business vision doesn't align with the life you want, we're never really going to pursue it. It's not going to have enough meaning to us. So I'm really big on actually what type of life do you want? And then we can get the business to deliver you the life you want, not just pursuing, growth for growth's sake or, as I say, because we've read a great book or something like that, really tuning into the life we want and then getting the business to deliver it.
That's a really interesting concept, Matt. Because a lot of people would think business coaching, that's what we do. We focus on the business. What you've just shared is, what kind of life do they want to create? And then how does the business help deliver that for them? Why is that so important?
Well, for me, I mean, from a personal perspective, my father had a business that didn't work out. That created quite a lot of issues for us, as a family. I've seen it with friends of mine who've started businesses, and you might say on paper, they look successful, employees, nice cars, lots of money, everything like that. But they haven't actually created the life they want. They've let the business sort of become their life, and the business now dictates what their life. The employees can't do anything without ringing them. The customers can't do anything without ringing them. They go on holiday, but they're, almost badge of honor. I'm on my laptop for 2 hours a day and the phone never stops ringing. And that's not really what, for me, what running a business is all about. I say to all my clients at our growth clubs, our 90-day plannings, or when they start, choosing to grow a business is not the easy choice. It's hard. So you deserve to have the rewards associated with that. You deserve to have the benefits associated with that. And that, for me, is about better time, energy, and money than you otherwise would have. So if you're growing a business and you're finding that actually I've got less time, I'm not earning the money I think I should, my energy levels are through the floor, there's something not working, and you actually need to really think about what this business is doing for you to ensure that it gives you the time, energy, and money you can have to lead the life you want to lead.
So we hear terms like vision. We need to have a vision for the business. When you say the business should give you more life and look at the business goals or the goals that you want for your life, how do you start? Because everyone's that gets into business has a vision for what they want the business to be or look like and what they want to create. What you're saying is really one step further and start with what kind of life do you want to create? And then how does the business kind of help you achieve that? Did I get that right?
Exactly, yeah. As a starting point, and we within coaching with an Actioncoach, we call it an alignment process. But for me, actually, that alignment of the business to deliver you the life you want is an ongoing process. So a business growth journey is a personal growth journey. So when people start working with me, I'm very clear with them that we'll set you some personal goals. And for the sake of it, that might be, the first family holiday where you don't have to answer the phone, or it might be buying a car or moving house or whatever it is. It's never for me to say what it should be, but it's to help people identify it. But then as they move forward with the coaching journey and the growth journey, after 9-12 months, they'll be ready to be realigned again because they'll have realized the potential of themselves in more clarity and perhaps believe in themselves in a bit more detail, which then sort of flips into the business to go, well, actually, what I thought this business was capable of, which may be going from like 200,000 to 300,000. Actually, like, what does 1 million look like? So the thinking evolves through the coaching process. So I see it as my job to ensure that I'm challenging them and giving them the confidence to believe in themselves more, because then when they get the business acumen and the skills and the education we give them, they can actually create a business that they never thought they'd be capable of.
So have you got a story you can share with me, Matt, about a client that had no kind of vision for their life and how you've helped them?
Yeah, I've got lots. The really interesting one, actually, on this process of realignment, I was working with a client who really clear 5-year plan to appoint an MD to run his business. And after about, I think it was 2 years, and I remember the conversation really clearly. So after about 2 years of a 5-year journey, in the January, being away for Christmas, and he came and he said, right, I'm done. Let's do it now. And for most people, and he thought it would take, we're accelerating it from 5 years to sort of, 3 years or maybe 4 years. And actually, we looked at it and said, right, where are we? We'd obviously been working to, everything we do is within Actioncoach is about detaching the owner from the business anyway. So we had quite a lot of things in place anyway. So it wasn't kind of this, oh my God, how's this going to happen? And he said, well, how long do you think? And I said, actually, I think, given where you're at, given the strength of the brand for the business, we could probably do it in 6 months. And we actually did it in 4. So drafted the advert, got the advert, amazing, business opportunity anyway. And the guy was able to step away from the business literally after 4 months. And he was looking after his wife and his kids. And he just said, I'm done. And it was a 4-monther. And he lived a great life while his kids are growing up. He's actually re-engaged now a few years down the line to say, I'm looking to get back into something. Can you help me? But it was a complete mindset shift for him, because he was firstly the mindset shift to realize I want to get the business to run without me is huge for a business owner, because identity often is attached to being the business owner. Secondly, to then say, I want to accelerate it. And then thirdly, to sort of go with me and going, actually, we can do this really quickly. And the reason we were able to do that and help him through that process so quickly is because he was so clear about the life he wanted to lead. It's because he knew what he was going to be doing at the end of it. And the pull of detaching himself from the business was so strong. A lot of business owners will stagnate, I think, or drift, because they actually don't know what they'd do if they weren't a business owner. Now, it's never for me to say, don't think of yourself as a business owner or you have to stop working, but it does inform a lot of people's identity. And that identity shift as a business owner, as we're working with them, for me, is one of the most important things to unpick. We can grow sales, we can recruit more people, but if you're still 85 years old and you can't, go on holiday without your laptop, maybe there's
something wrong. Unless they love it, which is fine.
Well, this is it. That's what I say. Never for us to say, is it?
Yeah. So you touched on something there around the identity of the business owner. When you get into business and you've been doing it and you're doing all the things and you're a few years in, the thought of even stepping away from the business is so foreign and often can probably cause some anxiety for business owners. Why is it that we're so kind of caught up in the identity of the business and who we are as a business owner?
I think it's about the patterns of thought that develop as you start a business and you're looking to grow the business. Deciding to start a business is a big choice in the first place. I think people often have the sort of utopian dream of what running a business is like. Then you tend to see after a year or two, the reality of it kicks in for a lot of people. So to actually grow the business is as I said earlier, it's a big decision and it's a tough decision as well. And we can get, business owners can get, without being too complicated, we can get ways of thinking. We can start to develop our own operating system almost, whereby the only way I'm going to do this is if I leave the house at 7:00 and I work till 7:00 at night. And actually, if I don't get to see my kids in the school play and I don't get spending time with my wife and my mental health through the floor and my physical health, it's all worth it because I'm going to have this amazing business, down the line. But often, some of the best clients I've ever worked with are the people who did that and are coming and going, help me, Matt, actually, because I'm 10 years in now. Okay, theoretically, I've got a big business, but I feel like I'm missing out on my kids growing up. I feel like my relationship's not where I need it to be. I'm unhealthy, I'm unfit. My mental health's not where it needs to be. And we have to actually then help them unpick and rewire themselves and almost get them to believe that they can have a great business and a great life, and it's not one or the other.
So business owners that are listening, what would be a couple of self-inquiring questions that they could ask around how they can think about what kind of life that they would like before they get to the business?
Yeah. I think the one thing I always say to people is like, just write down the best version of yourself. Forget who you are now, but think about the best version of yourself in maybe 5 or 10 years time. Like, what are you doing? Who are you with? Where are you based? What activities are you doing? What do people say about you? Almost a vision statement for people personally. And then they often say, well, actually, it's quite an easy next question to go, well, compared to where you are now and where you want to be, what needs to change? And often just a bit of self-reflection, we call it holding up the mirror sometimes, but a bit of self-reflection for business owners is really important for them to actually get some awareness that maybe things aren't where they want them to be. And only when we know where we are and where we want to be can we actually move towards it. So I get them to do that. And one of the other things that, I learned this actually used to get quite a lot of feedback from business owners where they used to say, I wish I'd met you like 5-10 years earlier when I'd started. So one of the questions I'll often say to business owners is, well, if you were going to start again based off what you know now, what would you do differently? And that can provoke some really interesting thoughts actually. And often I've had a couple of clients where we've actually shrunk their business, which, people might go counterintuitively. Oh my God, you're a business coach, Matt. Like, what are you helping? And it was because the business fundamentally wasn't delivering this guy what he wanted. And when we'd done the alignment process, it was like, I'm trying to grow this massive business because I think I should, but I've got the money I want to retire and my wife to be happy and the kids to be happy. But I really like doing what I'm doing, but it's just creating me too much stress at the moment. So we actually spent 2 years restructuring and shrinking the business to make it easier for him to deliver him the lifestyle he wanted. One of the interesting things as a byproduct of that is that now that the business has actually grown beyond what it was in the first place, because it's so simple, because he's attached to it more, he's got it working in a way that is probably how it should have been in the first place. So
Isn't that
it's
interesting?
really funny how it pans out. Yeah.
So you mentioned that this kind of questioning and alignment you like to do every 9 months. That's a really interesting point, because I would have thought, that's just what you do once with a coach and then off you go. But why that?
For me, I say actually when I start working with somebody, like, part of my job is to be with you along the way, but also be thinking 3-6 months ahead about what you need next. So if you think about an athlete having a coach, whether or a golfer or anyone, the coach would be thinking, right, where's this player on their career, and what skill or what mindset or what challenge do they need next in order to achieve what they want to achieve? So I see it as part of my job to think the same as well. So if I think someone's either coasting or they're just nailing their goals, they're getting the what's next question off me. It might be 9, to be honest, it might be 12, it might be 6, because for a lot of people, before they experience coaching, they've never thought about a lot of these things, about actually what a great life looks like. And some of the structures and disciplines that we put in place as coaches just facilitate such a quick set of results from people, both in terms of their lives and their business, that they then realize what they're capable of and what their business is capable of. And things start to fall into place. So my job then is to go, okay, based off what you now know, what does good look like? And one of the real things that I certainly see with people who've been at it for sort of, slightly longer, maybe 3-4 years, there's a really interesting book called The Second Mountain. And what it effectively does is it's about saying people think the first mountain is it, and they get to the top and they look over and go, oh no, that's it. That's the one I actually need to do. And that's normally about how the book is based on the concept of giving back and more impact in the community. What can you create for other people? I really enjoy that part of coaching, because for a lot of them, they can achieve, the business can help them achieve everything they want in life. And then the what's next question for them is, well, what about impact can you have on the world? So that sort of second mountain part of the journey, I really enjoy.
I love that. So you mentioned, the first self-inquiring question would be, the identity piece. So who do I want to be? What kind of person do I want to be? When I look forward, what would people say about me? How do I want people to refer to me? Things like that. What's next?
So from there, really, it's saying, what type of business do you want to have to deliver that, basically? Because there's all sorts of an infinite amount, actually, if you think about it, of ways to grow a business. And I think too often business owners get caught up in what they think they should do. They think they've got to sell to the world. And actually, for a lot of business owners, they're within the realms of their local marketplace, and that might be 20, 30, 40, 50 miles of where they're based. There's enough customers there to deliver them everything they want. But we sometimes get caught up in, well, I need to be doing this on social media, I need to do this marketing campaign or whatever, rather than getting really specific actually about the type of client you want to work with, who you love working with, and then finding them and ensuring your marketing is there to do that. And that clarity for people is really liberating, because there's a great book by Seth Godin called This Is Marketing. And he says, you don't need everybody, you just need enough. And for a lot of business owners, they never know what enough is. They just think it's more, big, big, big. And sometimes when you can say to them, well, actually, if you got like even 5 new clients a month, depending on the size of the business and what they do, and you did that every month for a year, what position would your business be in? And I think our job as coaches sometimes to cut out the noise, to simplify things for business owners in order to move forward, because there's a lot of noise out there, and actually choosing what not to do is sometimes more important than what to do. So the type of business you want, who you want to serve is the follow-on part of that process with business owners ultimately.
Yeah, amazing. I just, really, it's such a foreign concept to have a business that can work without you. And we have this belief system, and I don't know where it comes from, obviously, parents, whatever, that we have to work hard and we have to do all the things and no one can do it better than we can. Why can that often hold the business back?
Well, I mean, I think one of the sort of concepts I use, like a bottle of wine, like the bottlenecks at the top. And I think for a lot of business owners, they have the drive within them. They have a concept. So they may be a good technician at what they do. It's a completely different skill set actually to be a business owner. And for a lot of people, they don't actually ever get trained. They've never even read a business book. It's like, well, I'm a good roofer. I'm a good whatever. I'm just going to start a business. And then lo and behold, I found some customers. Next thing you know, I've got a £500,000 turnover business, and I don't quite know how it happened. And that happens with a lot of business owners. But interestingly, if I say to a business owner, well, what's the difference between you and somebody, say like Richard Branson or Bill Gates or whoever, some business role model that people have? Because at the end of the day, everyone's a human being. What's the difference? Now, there may be a bit of technical skill, but we can learn technical skills. So what's the difference therefore? It's a mindset thing. And why Richard Branson is able to run 75 businesses or however many he does from a desert, from his island in wherever it is because he thinks differently about how he grows his businesses. So that's not to say that my £500,000 turnover roofing client needs to become Richard Branson, but he definitely needs to think differently. And actually, when we give people the tools and the skills, that's kind of like the easy bit. It's here's a tool, use it. But when the person's mindset starts to shift and they think, actually, I can see how this will support the growth of the business and I can let go. How if the customers go through a process rather than ringing my mobile phone, if there's a process whereby jobs get allocated for my roofer rather than it going through him and his mobile phone. And slowly but slowly, they just start to almost build the evidence to support a new belief system that actually I can step away and it will run without me. It's not a magic wand, unfortunately. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there who say it's a magic wand and they can shift everything in a week or two. It's not a magic wand. I think you have to trust yourself. You have to trust the coach. You have to trust the system. But bit by bit, slowly, people start to realize it. And then kind of when the penny drops almost, that's when things really get going, because then people actually realize, I'm sort of smiling to myself, I've got a thing I use sometimes with certain clients where I have to sort of bang my fist on the table and go, it's not about you. And it's meant from the right place. But sometimes it's not. It's actually, what can that business owner do for the business? What can they do for the employees or the customers? And when they start to think actually their job is to grow their team, to grow the business for them, i.e. it's not about you, it's about them. When that sort of starts to sink in, that's when you see some real shifts.
Can be greater than them.
Yeah, exactly.
So one of the things that you said, which I love, is how can be different for every business owner. So, if you don't want to, own 75 companies like Richard Branson and you just kind of, what you want a simple life and you want to, scale, and it means scaling the business back, then we can help with that too. And I love that that's very bespoke based on, again, what you've shared is what does the business owner want? What kind of life do they want to design for themselves? So I love that. The opposite then, in terms of, let's say someone wants more. They've got a bigger vision of whether it's, philanthropic or whatever their kind of intention is for what they'd like to create, then, what are the business has to then kind of be bigger. And I know one of our coaches said to me once, in life, when you think this big, and if you're listening, my hands are quite kind of small in a ball. When you think this small and, dream this small, then your business is this small. But when you can think big, dream big, then your business has the opportunity to grow into that space as well. And that's one of the benefits of having a coach, is to help you align your business with the life that you want to create.
Yeah. I think it's really true. The thinking to build a skyscraper, the thinking to build a house. If you've got a challenge, the think is still just the brain power, isn't it? It's the thinking's the same. And I think as coaches, our job is we've got the tools to do it. The experience of having done it before. A bit of pointers like, what about this? What about that? And then there's helping people unpick limiting beliefs, or to really tune in that mindset to the big growth, should that be what they want. And I think between those three areas as coaches, that's how we support people with that high level of thinking. The experience, the mindset piece, and the frameworks that we use and the tools we've got.
Yeah, and I think, with that self-inquiring questions that you've shared, I mean, people can, listen to this podcast and they can do that for themselves. But often it's this, a coach is going to help them get to the next layer of that, a little bit deeper questioning, bigger vision, So what would be, if you were sitting in front of a business owner now, what would be, and let's say that they do want to they want a business and they only want to work, 2 or 3 days a week, and have a profit of $5 million. What would you say?
I think the starting point for me with something like that is firstly to say to them, well, if almost one of those sort of, I think it's a pretty random question, but like, if you couldn't fail, like, what would you do? Because often the fear of failure is what holds us back, because the majority of the time, in my experience, most business owners know what they need to do or what they could do to achieve their goal, but there's something holding them back. So there's that mindset piece about actually understanding what is stopping you now, because fear isn't a bad thing per se, but a lot of the time it's stuff that we're making up for ourselves, and there's something holding us back from going after the big goal. So for me, I'd want to understand that initially, like, well, if you couldn't fail, what would you do? Because 9 times out of 10, they'll come up with the answer. And I think the other thing as well is that, it's almost that thinking about the skyscraper and the house. I keep referencing books, but there's a great book that's like 10x is easier than 2x. The thinking big. And most people can do that pretty well. But then it's about joining the dots from the thinking big to the reality of where to start. Again, we get really clear with people, well, if you've got this great vision, what does a good 2025 look like? All my clients, will do a 90-day plan as well, like with then specific weekly actions. So they know with intent that what they need to do this week or 2 weeks, this month, this quarter is going to feed into what a good year looks like, which is what's going to feed into the vision for the business. And that's where people get lost. Call it the execution gap, whatever, but sometimes that vision into reality, people just can't join the dots. And I think our job as coaches to join the dots, so they know actually what I'm doing this week is going to feed towards that end vision. And that's often sometimes why people can't think that big, because their current reality and their current way of thinking is how they view the world. And our job is to open them up to a different way of thinking about the world and what their business is capable of, and then help them join the dots to get there.
So you mentioned that with the client that you talked about, they hired an MD and, within 4 months they stepped out of the business. What's another example of how having this kind of process, the alignment, that you've got a story to share about another client?
I think I'm working with a couple of business partners who kind of met and decided to set up a business. Now, I knew them already, but I think the difference there is that because I knew them already from previous businesses, I've challenged them really hard on doing this a certain way, because they'd experienced the coaching before, one of them had. And that's been a lot of challenge to say, okay, you're here, but what are you actually capable of? What is your potential here? Because the dream is there. You've told me what you think this business can do and what you want your lives to be like. But you're telling me 10 years, I think you're capable of 3 years. So a lot of challenge with this pair. but they've nailed it. And there's been, the first 18 months was tough because of the mindset shift they had to go through, i.e. was servicing clients, but with a bottleneck. And they realized they were the bottleneck. So that then became about recruitment. How do we recruit a great team and keep them engaged? That then became about, well, how do we actually fund that? So along the way, they're getting financial acumen to understand actually when can we recruit, when's the best time. Just because you think you should doesn't always mean you should. They've had to nail the processes to ensure that the customer onboarding process and the ongoing service is brilliant. They've had to think differently about who they are and what their role in the business is. And then obviously review the plan consistently with me going, well, actually, what if you did this? What if you did that? Because actually, I think you're not quite coasting, but you're giving yourself some easy targets here. What if that was the number? What would you do? And that shift across 2-3 years has been remarkable for them. And they're doing really well. I think they'll, they've doubled revenue and profits in the last couple of years, and they'll probably hit that million by the end of this year, or definitely be on a run rate for $1 million turnover, which in 3 years from a zero start is pretty impressive.
It just blows me away, every time I hear stories, just how quickly that coaches can get results with clients from doing this kind of work. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that, and congratulations on their success. And I guess we probably do a full circle back to communication. So then it's important in that case for the business owners to be communicating quite often. And so how does communication kind of loop into that example?
Well, I think the key bit for them was actually communication between them. Because they were growing so quickly, there's a lot of pressures that it was important that they actually stopped and communicated with each other. And often that was our coaching sessions were often the time that and I suddenly was going, hang on a minute, this coaching session is not where you two get to catch up. What's happening in between our coaching sessions, whereby you're coming to me not for your catch up, but you're coming to me. Obviously, we're talking about business growth. With a rapidly growing business, communication with a team is really important. Communication with individuals is really important. And obviously, developing ways, there is a B2B type business, but developing ways, scalable ways of communicating with customers, ensuring that customers are kept up to speed on what's happening, so that it doesn't become out of control. So I think the communication bit there has probably been fundamental to their success and their own growth, to realize that actually it doesn't all need to be just through them. They can put in place communication frameworks and systems for the team that they don't always have to be in, so that people are on board and know what's got to happen and when.
Yeah, it's interesting, even just this alignment process, thinking about the kind of life that they want to have and the identity of who they want to be. Often in a partnership, particularly, that process can be quite interesting because often they've never shared that with anyone before.
Yeah, the alignment process there is more important than ever, because they often start the business with the same intentions. But as I said earlier, then we grow as individuals along the way and our view of the world changes. And I think I've had 2 I can definitely think of, and it's probably more, where I've coached co-business owners apart. Now, that's not from me, but that's because they've realigned, and one's gone, actually, I want to do this now. And the other one's gone, well, I want to do that. So the conversation then is, okay, how do we make it work so you both get to achieve the life you want? That's got to be the starting point. And if that means that one person buys the other person out and the other person becomes a tree surgeon instead of an electrician or whatever it is, then that's great. And that people might go, well, Matt, maybe you lost a client out of it. Well, I haven't, because I've actually helped 2 people live and create the life they want. And they both ended up coming back anyway with their respective new businesses down the line. So I think it's really important that as long as we're focused on the individuals and the life they want to lead, our job as coaches is just to facilitate that happening for them through the power of their business. And if that means that they get coached, people might say away from each other, but that is what it is ultimately, but in a positive way, then I'm fine with that.
You know what? Key takeaway for me from this conversation is just how that is almost the most important process as coaches that we do for business owners, is that kind of level of questioning and then coming back to the table and doing it often, because your business can change, your motivations can change, what have you. So yeah, lots of takeaways. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, I used to, with the alignment process, I used to do it where it was in the diary, say, for 9 or 12 months. And I used to say to them, do you want to come and do a realignment? They just get told they're doing it now.
Yeah.
Coming in. And it might be soon. I've got a few at the moment where they've done really well last year. And they started off this year and it's continued. And I said to them, Q2 this year, you're coming in for a realignment because you're doing it. What's next? So they just get told they're doing it now because it's so important.
Yeah, which, you really need a coach to help facilitate that. Love it. So 3 questions that I want to wrap up with, Matt. Best book you've ever read?
Good question. I have a lot of books. They're all sitting here. I don't know, I quite like spiritual type stuff, like different ways of thinking. I've got a lot. There's a guy called Matthew McConaughey who's an actor. He wrote a book called Green Lights a couple of years ago. I'll often pick that up again just because I like his way of thinking about things. I think, almost just thinking about it, it's back to that alignment piece, like, a way of living and a way of operating is a starting point. How do I get my business to do that? His way of operating and living I quite like. So I always reference that one.
The traffic lights or green light? Yeah,
Green Light.
I listened to Green Light. I listened to the audio book of Green Light, and just his voice and commentary, as an actor was so entertaining. I loved it. Yeah, great book. And Matt, best piece of advice that you ever received?
Don't overthink things.
Love it.
Yeah,
that's an easy one.
I was pretty good at it for a while. Someone just said, Matt, stop overthinking things. I was like, okay.
Gosh, such good advice. We do overthink a lot, don't we? And Matt, who's been kind of the most impactful mentor or coach for you throughout your life?
It's a good question, that. I know I've had a few people that gave me my first jobs. A guy took a bit of a punt on me. And that got me into finance in the first place. And he's kind of always been there. A few of my friends' dads along the way have been there. So yeah, I don't think there's any one in particular. I've had some great coaches within Actioncoach, depending on the cycle I'm at. And got an amazing guy called James Burke at the moment, really helping with marketing and everything like that. But I think as we grow as people, we need different supports along the way. So it's important that, I'm in a cycle of my life now where I'm in a growth phase. So I actually need a bit of support with marketing per se. I've done other bits where it's been mindset, with structure, with finance, whatever it might be. So I think it's just important that you think about the cycle of your life you're in, aligned with your vision of who you want to be, and say, actually, what support do I need around me at the moment? And get that coach or that person at that, to support you on where you are on your journey.
What a perfect way to wrap up. Matt Ball, thank you so much for spending time with me and the sharing and learning today.
Absolute pleasure.
Shell Adams, your host here. Hats off to you for committing to your learning by listening to this podcast. And if you'd like some help implementing some of these strategies, then click the link in the description to find your local action coach. They can help you put these strategies into action and take your business and your life to the next level. In the meantime, like and subscribe so that you're the first to get our next episode. We'll see you soon.